dear friends. It's Carly, and welcome back to whatever this is gonna be. I'm gonna say this message is timeless. I don't know what it is yet, so I have no idea when you'll be watching this, or who might be watching this, or if anybody will be watching this. I have come to a place in my practice with myself where I know when there is certain energy inside of me that wants to be expressed, that like my best bet as an individual is to just like buckle my seatbelt and go to town, like get expressing. And that is very characteristic of my own personal human design, where my only defined channel is the 1222. And basically what that energy is like when it bubbles up inside you and you feel like saying it out loud, do it. And otherwise, like just chillax, like a little clam on a beach, like I'm just hanging out, you know, like waiting for the next bubble of energy to rise within me. And let me tell you what is risen. It's the energy's there. So like I said, I don't know exactly what this is going to be, because the energy that I'm feeling is rather intense. Like I can feel my heart pounding almost with the intensity of what I'm feeling. And I want to say it out loud. Like I said, like that's just really all I can do. It's like when the pressure inside of a volcano is to its max, the volcano doesn't like really decide like, do I explode? Maybe not. Maybe I'll just hold it. Like, no, it's like, there it goes. And it's kind of like that. So I'm going to let it out, and then we'll deal with later, whatever it is. So what's really at the forefront of my consciousness this week, I'll say, like for the last several days, the pieces of this have been clicking into place. I have no doubt we can get into all the pieces that we want. We have all the time in the world. This is just for the mental health of Carly's self. Yeah, what's at the forefront of my mind is like when you do your authenticity, when you step forward and express what feels to you like your authentic self, how do you know when you're doing it right or doing it wrong? Where can that measurement / feedback come from? And basically, like, is it possible? Like, is it even possible for someone to tell you that your authentic self is wrong? Like, I guess my question is like, how would they know that? How could they possibly understand or have any reference of what your authenticity is? That like authenticity is as unique as snowflakes, more unique than fingerprints, more unique than DNA. Like authenticity is one in trillions, quadrillions, mega million, like on and on and on, with the reason we're all here. The reason that each individual exists in the first place is that we are all unique. And so when you express your authenticity and someone comes along and says, hey, I think you'd be more authentic if you did it like this. Is that a thing? Like that's really what I want to know, and really what I'm like really circling around, because this week has been so interesting. Always the pieces come together in divine timing as you're ready to let go of something. Typically, like you're ready to heal an old pattern and move into a new pattern, a new way of being, a new way of responding to what life brings to you. It's like the pieces show up so that you can weave it together and see so clearly that like, oh, that's why the old pattern never worked. That's why it doesn't make sense. This is okay, I get it now. And this week, the universe has just bringing me gift after gift after gift of opportunity to see my authenticity more clearly than I ever have. And in true Aries energy fashion, if you're following the transits right now, you know that, well, and again, I don't know when you're watching this, but there is so much Aries energy coming through right now, along with Uranus conjuncting the North Node. They're still several degrees apart at this point, but that's coming too. All of this is really bringing to the forefront our individuality and the unique mission that caused my soul to get off its ass in non-physical and get itself a body so that it could come into this physical reality and live out whatever urgent mission it had in mind. The reason I needed to be born in the first place, the reason that I manifested myself into a body in the first place. That mission has always been burning under the surface within me, for sure. And this week, I feel like I'm seeing what that mission is in a clearer way than I ever have before. And in true Aries fashion, this is what I started to say, we find our true self more clearly than ever before in the face of opposition, in the face of someone telling you you're doing it wrong. That's when you express your authenticity and someone says, hey, that's not authentic, that's not genuine, you should do it like this. Or that you do express like your emotional truth, this is the energy that's inside of me. And then people want to argue about why you feel that way. You know, like again, expressing your authenticity and then being told that it's wrong. Is that possible? Is that real? Is that an illusion? I think it is. That's my opinion. And this is really what I'm coming to as I'm like getting this feedback swirling around me, telling me that my authenticity is wrong. It really helps me to see that that's like not even a thing, you know, like somebody else being the measuring stick of like your expression compared to like what is real and true and going on inside of you and your energy. They can't feel the inside part. So how could they possibly like be the measuring stick that says like how close did your expression land to this thing that's actually real? Only you can feel what's going on inside you. So only you will know whether or not you're being authentic. And I do think it's interesting from two sides. Like I said, I feel like I'm seeing my mission in life more clearly than I ever have before. One side is this like owning my authenticity, and there is almost like twofold what needs to go on here for me as far as like healing my past patterns and falling into new patterns, or like cultivating my new patterns, my new ways of being. Where on the one hand, it is recognizing that like only I know what's true for me. That I talked a little bit in a recent video that this may end up being part 2 to that series, I don't know. But what even is authenticity, part 1, knowing yourself. Like I talked a lot about being a recovering people pleaser in that video, and that energy is very much what I'm talking about as far as like healing my old patterns of wanting other people to respond well to what I show them or tell them, or I want them to resonate and agree. And that's like, I think, a typical human want or desire as far as like we're like literally biologically wired for human connection. So I think it's natural to want resonance between you and other people. I maybe really overemphasize like my need for harmony with others, but that's like its own thing. And then the other side of this, like as I'm doing this first part, realizing that like I don't have to please other people. They can't ever know what's right for me. How could they? Like that's just like a flawed premise to even begin to think that like they can tell me if I'm doing it right or wrong, right? Like, and that's another piece of that is like they can't tell you if you're doing it right either. Just like they can't tell you if you're doing it wrong. Again, they don't know what's inside you. So you could look like the most authentic person on the outside. And if you're holding back, if you're still keeping part of yourself like over to the side, because, well, I'll show everything, but not that part. Like, we don't know. we don't, I mean, the super empathic ones can tell you there's something being held back there. But again, it's like they can't know that. Like they can't know that that isn't the way it's supposed to be. You know, like if there is something that is coming through in the presentation that someone else is deeming inauthentic, there is such a process going on inside of us all the time between us experiencing our inner selves and then turning that into what do we put out into the world? How do we communicate with others? And that goes beyond, you know, making videos and putting them on YouTube, like leaving a comment on somebody's YouTube video. That's putting yourself out there in the world in a certain way. The way you talk to the cashier at the grocery store, that's you putting yourself out there in a certain way. So like we all are converting and translating our inner selves to the outer world all the time. And there is the right time for things, and then there's not the right time, and like we get to feel inside of ourselves when that right time is. So if we're holding something back, then that's really up to us, and choosing to hold it back is actually authentic because that's what we feel is right. So even somebody telling you that like, well, you're not putting your full self out there and that's not authentic, again, they don't know what it feels like on the inside, so they can't know if it's right or wrong. So that's my opinion on that. As I've practiced this, like in the face of these you know, chunks of feedback these last couple weeks of like telling me that I'm doing it wrong, basically I'm recognizing myself in these people, right? Like every single person who comes to us is a mirror. Every single person who comes to us is helping us to see ourselves more clearly. And I know for a fact that I have told people that they're wrong in the past. I've argued for my perspective over theirs many times. And I even made a girl cry one time because I was like, pushing my perspective at her and not respecting her boundaries. So I have done this where I try to take what I know to be true on the inside and assume that it's true for everyone. And so like there's a little bit of that, and that's again where I go back to when you're ready to heal the old pattern, the universe will bring you all the pieces that you need to like weave it all together and see like, because what I'm coming to full circle right in the middle of all of this feedback these last couple weeks is like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for someone to tell you that your authentic perspective is wrong. That like their way is right and your way is wrong. Like that is the most invalidating, the most flawed premise. And like looking back at like how I've done that in the past, I can see where, so like for me personally in my natal chart, like my South Node is in Virgo, and I was reading Stephen Forrest's yesterday's Sky, the book on astrology and reincarnation, and it goes through the South Node, like trying to weave together a narrative of like who were you in a past life by understanding your South Node and like all the different pieces of it. It's like a 12-step process of like what sign, what house, what aspects are there conjunct planets or square or opposite planets? What about the ruler? Where is it at? What's going on with the ruler? Are there aspects? What's next to it? All of these pieces of understanding like who were you in a past life. And the bottom line that I got to at the end of like doing the 12-step process on my South Node, my past life personality was like, I was a pushy know-it-all. Like that's who I was before, and that's who I was at the beginning for the first like 25 to 30 years of my life. And now I'm healing that, and I'm manifesting, you know, the full circle moment of being on the receiving end of the behavior that I myself have perpetuated in the past, or perpetrated. That's what I meant. Maybe perpetrated. No, maybe perpetuated works. I don't know. Does it? Hard to say. But it's like when we're ready to heal, I think we end up on the receiving end of the behavior that we used to personally hand out to people. That's like one of my favorite things about reading Stephen Forrest's book about reincarnation is how he talks about like a common misconception with reincarnation is that, okay, so like I burned somebody's house down in a past life, and now in this lifetime, I'm going to get my house burned down. And did I say burned down? I think I did. Cool. And he's like, actually, karma is a habit. It's way more likely to repeat itself. So if you burn down somebody's house in a past life, chances are you're probably going to like to set fires in this life. And that you're going to continue doing that until you have a profound moment of self-awareness where you're able to transcend this habit of behavior and realize how damaging it truly is. And in that understanding, the full lesson, I think, this is me personally, this is not from him, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but like this is me personally thinking like, as I play all of that out, that like we're more likely to repeat our old karma. Like I look at my first 25 years of being a pushy know-it-all, and I can see how like I was very anxious, very depressed, very socially isolated, like had a really hard time making friends. People just like didn't like me, and that's understandable. I took my truth and I shoved it down everybody's throat in the name of, I'm only trying to help. I hope this helps, you know? Like assuming that you need to help people is kind of like fail number one on my own part as a Virgo South Node. Like you want to fix everything. You want to improve everything. Everything can be improved. You see potential everywhere. Like out in the world, like you aren't just seeing like reality, you're seeing reality plus improvements. So you can see like, what is the potential everywhere you look, and you try to move reality towards the perfected potential version of like how good it could be. And nobody wants you to help them unless they ask you. You know, one of those quotes that like really profoundly stuck with me as I was like making this transition out of my old patterns and into my new patterns is like, stop answering the questions that weren't asked. You know, like that is something that I was only trying to help, and I have this knowledge that feels so good and this perspective that feels so right. So how could it not help them? And I like legit didn't understand that. Like, I mean, this starts off when I was very small. By the time I was 4, I had 3 younger brothers. So when I went to school for kindergarten, I'm 5, and I would come home from kindergarten and like make my brothers play house with me, make my brothers play school with me, where they would be the students. They would have to sit in their desks and I would stand, and I had like a little chalkboard and I would write on the chalkboard and I would teach them things. I was the teacher and they had to learn and had to be the students. And this was me at 5 years old. So it's been kind of a work in progress since then to like unravel this like compulsion to help people, because it also brings up this other thought around what my plants have taught me. This has been like kind of bringing it full circle around like when you're caring for plants, it's really easy to see that like you can do better damage to a plant by over nurturing it than by under nurturing. Like if you under nurture a plant, you can also, which means basically like that you're slowly depriving it of what it needs to continue living, meaning it's slowly deteriorating. If you do that to a plant, in my experience, you can also slowly nurse it back to health and end up with a perfectly healthy plant. You can resume care at any time and it will live. Some plants die way faster than others, I'll grant you that. But if that's what's happened, it's made a slow decline into illness, you can make a slow rise back up into health. If you over nurture a plant, if you over water a plant, you'll kill it on the spot. No more plant. No remedy. No nursing it back to health. You shocked it into suicide, essentially. Like you drowned it in your trying to love it, trying to give it what it needs to live. You killed it. And that was kind of something that was already coming together. Like I said, from my plants, they were teaching me this lesson. And that was right around the time that Maddie was telling me about life path numbers. And I'm a Life Path 6. And as I started looking at Life Path 6 information, it was like warning you about smothering the people that you love, that like you're way more likely to over nurture and smother. And like, I need to be of service. I need to help. And if I'm not helping, then I'm not valuable or worthy. And so then you'll like force your help on other people who don't want it. And I was like, oh my God. And that fit so well with like what I was learning from my plants, that like over nurturing is way more dangerous than under nurturing. Like you can work your way back from under nurturing. Over nurturing, that shit is hard to reverse. Like it makes more permanent damage. And that was definitely my experience of like trying to force my own rightness on other people. And in these last couple weeks, and in this very, pointed realization that I'm having this morning about, it is not possible for anyone these last couple weeks to tell me that my authenticity is right or wrong. The people who show up and resonate and they love it and they're cheering me on, they know just as much as the people who show up and be like, actually, if you did it this way, you'd be even more authentic. Like, nobody knows, because nobody can feel what's inside of me. Only I can know that. Only I can know if in this moment, am I purely translating my essence into what I'm demonstrating? Yep. Yep. Look at me. I'm being authentic. I know this. And so this is so powerful because it really does send me into a place where I'm seeing the full loop of karma that the seeds that I brought in with me to heal in this lifetime. I see how, those seeds definitely they perpetuated like into this lifetime, and I continued those patterns, those habits, like from very early childhood. Like I just couldn't help myself. I had to teach and help and like hold them hostage and help them. Like that was my approach. And it was very helpful because, my brothers refusing to play school with me at, basically like 2 times into that experience was how long that lasted. And now they like put their foot down. They refused to participate. It was at age 5 where I learned you can't force people to see it your way. And yet it took me another 20 years of like, you gotta stop telling people what's right or wrong for them. Like you don't know. And this is me talking to me. I've done this whole process where, and it's really interesting because in the last Sacred Circle, somebody was asking basically the same question. Like I do want to speak my truth and I do want to say what's real for me, but when I do, I get so much pushback. I get so much grief and disagreement, and people don't like me and they don't want to hear it. They don't ask me back. Like, it doesn't seem to be going well. And what I've practiced, and this was what came to share with them, and what I'm feeling called into right now is like, again, when I deepen into like what is authenticity and who can truly judge what's authentic, my answer is only the person who's doing it can judge how authentic it is or not. But I lost my train of thought. It'll come back. But what I've cultivated is speaking more authentically and integrating at the deepest levels these truths that I feel so strongly within myself. And like the main truth is that even though I feel so strongly that this is true within myself, I can never assume that this is going to be true for other people. So when speaking, especially when venturing into the territory of expressing my truth, and like where I started this morning, the energy that rose within me that this is my authentic self, and it absolutely does want to be expressed. And so I do need to express myself. And I know lots of people in this sphere, in this community, have these similar urges. And so how can I best be received? And I think when we are very present inside the fact that this is our truth, this is not universal truth. This is just how I'm experiencing it based on my experiences, my past life karma that I brought in with me, my healing that I intended for this lifetime. These are the experiences that I have collected into my tapestry, and I understand that my tapestry doesn't look like anybody else's. And so I can't tell anybody else what's true for them. I can only express what's true for me. So it's a lot in how we phrase it and how we own it. Like, are we trying to put this out there to change somebody else's mind and get them to be different? Or are we simply honoring the energy that's rising from inside us at any given time? And again, it's like only you can know that. Only I can know if I'm doing it in any given moment. Only I can feel, am I allowing an unobstructed pipeline from what feels like basically the bottom of my belly to my throat? And if you look on my human design chart, that's the solar plexus, the 22, connected to the throat, the 12. So that channel is what I feel is like doing its expression. And at that point, once you've in the moment felt that I honored my truth and my being's desire to express that uninhibited truth, at that point, there becomes like a case closed kind of vibe around it. Like it's no longer open for interpretation. Like that ship has sailed. I know in the moment I was authentic. Done deal. Like nobody coming along after the fact can tell me that I wasn't, because I know I was there. I felt it. So that feels really, really liberating to me. It also brings me to this place where, like, I feel like I'm understanding some of the guilt that I used to carry, where, like, I absolutely shoved my truth down other people's throats, trying to make it theirs. And I just am so sorry to like anybody that I've ever done that to, especially, like I said, I think of the girl that I made cry that one time. Like, I mean, I can see how misguided it really is. And all I can do going forward is be more aware of how I'm owning my own authenticity and granting full sovereignty to every single other individual. And what does that mean? That means that I'm not cutting myself off from feedback. I want to hear what your perspective is. And I'm like, for the first time, like this morning especially, I think is what really drew this into a like sharper point. I read something in one of my comments that, like, again, I just didn't agree. Like, our truths are clearly looking at the situation differently. And for one of the first times in my life, I didn't feel threatened by that. And I was like, whoa, oh, look at me, I'm growing. And like, that's new territory for me to be like, that's a really interesting perspective that you have there. I would really like to understand more about this piece. Look at me go. Like, seriously, this is like one of my most proud accomplishments that I've hit in a long time. And this is like really reminding me of, again, like me seeing my mission on this planet that much more clearly, because I really truly believe that our best work is, here I am, like in the moment, recognizing my own old pattern. And I'm going to rephrase that, because our best work is none of my fucking business. My best work is when I am in conversation with people that I disagree with. And I know this. I know I can like see it in my birth chart that like, this is what I'm built for. I have like one of the world's most open minds. And to give that as a gift to people who look at the world so differently than me, and to still put myself in their shoes and to still empathize with their heart and their mind, and to get from that whatever crossover is meant to happen back towards me, back towards them. We'll each take from it whatever our soul's highest self is like intending from that interaction. But ultimately, like, there is such rich soil when you come together with two opposing viewpoints. Both people have such a rich opportunity to not change their mind, but to get clearer in their own right, to get clearer in their own perspective, in their own truth, and their own ability to own their own authenticity. Like, to be able to say, I see it really differently, but that's still really interesting. Why do you think it's like this? You know, and just like genuinely be curious. Like, this is one of my superpowers, is to be curious and have an open mind. And this like grounding that I'm feeling into my own authenticity and knowing for a fact that nobody else can ever tell me if it's right or wrong, and means by extension, I can't know if theirs is right or wrong. I can only know what's right for me, and I'll let them decide what's right for them. And if we end up disagreeing, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe that's more information for my process of contemplation in the future, but it's just one thread getting woven into the trillions that I've collected throughout my life. So it's just one more piece of data when you hear what somebody else thinks. Whether it's about you or about anything, you know, like their opinion of you is just kind of like that. It's like one more piece of data for the pile. There's a lot. Thanks for leaving your comment. I appreciate it. I truly do. I go back and forth between, because I am so Gemini, I am so open to the world and wanting to hear from everybody. I don't care what you think. I want to know. And then that's like sextile my Leo moon, where it's like really sensitive when people are like, you didn't do good. And my Virgo South node that like cannot live with being told that I'm wrong or made a mistake or any of these things. So these are patterns and things that I'm healing. And as I heal them, I get more and more aware and clear on my mission in this world is to cross the boundaries of belief. Like, we don't need to believe the same things to still have a conversation, and both of us get clearer in our own authenticity. You know, like dissenting, opposing viewpoints can actually help us both get even clearer. It's like sharpening stone, you know, like that you need the whatever, I don't know how that works. It's so funny. Sometimes like I'm pulling these analogies where I'm like, you've like literally never even tried to sharpen a knife or touched a sharpening stone. Why are you using that analogy? I don't know. That's just where what came out. I'll check in here and see if there's anything else before I wrap this up. This has felt so good. So good. Like just a big hug to my higher self, my whole self. The timing of all the pieces is so perfect. Every single piece that lands on the pile is helpful. Every single new thought that gets included in the soup is meant to be and can be useful, can be of service, even if it's a completely different viewpoint, even if it's somebody like insulting what you're doing, like it can still be helpful. It can still be useful in finding an even brighter clarity around what does it mean to be my authentic self in this world, in this life, in this society where there are laws, there are like agreed upon rules for being. And it's very interesting to me how seriously we as a society take these laws, and that for the most part, you gotta wonder if they're even necessary, because I mean, they're just pieces of paper that exist somewhere, you know, for the most part. And like, those really don't control like complete anarchy. Like, I think naturally we're peaceful creatures, and that's why there's not widespread anarchy. But again, that's only my perspective. But laws are very interesting to me as far as like how seriously we take them, because, well, for one thing, up until 1850 6, I think, it was legal in this country, in the United States, to like own another person as property. Like less than 200 years ago. Is that moral? I don't know. It was the law. At the time, they thought it was extremely moral because obviously that race is not as good as ours. And so we need to keep them in their place. And we have laws to make sure that this moral thing happens. I don't think that's moral. I don't think laws in general end up being moral necessarily. Some of them, maybe. So what laws should we abide by? Like those laws of society, those laws of nature, those laws of the universe, those laws of what feels right and true inside of me in any given moment. This is the beautiful part where I get to say every single person gets to make that choice for themselves. And I know what I'm doing. And it feels really good. So again, I don't know when you're going to watch this, but you are, and I appreciate you hanging in here with me. I would love to know how you think authenticity works from your perspective. How do you see it when you look out at what it means to be authentic, and how do you know when you're doing it right or doing it wrong? What's your experience been? What pieces has your life woven into your tapestry? What does your tapestry look like? Share with us in the comments. And maybe we all get to become a little bit clearer in hearing each other's viewpoints. And I know for me personally, it feels like a huge relief to basically no longer make myself responsible for what anybody else thinks about anything. Like, right, wrong, what even is that? What does that even mean? Is there such a thing? Is that real? Is it an illusion? Until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.